Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and hey, happy Friday, everyone. I hope you are happy, healthy. Everything is still okay after this horrible hurricane swept through the southeast. That thing was powerful. We even got some rain. And, we were just talking to some friends and, we recently moved our studio from Florida to Asheville, North Carolina. And we were joking that, because we moved out of Florida, a lot of these hurricanes have been skirting Florida or hitting, kind of remote regions of Florida. And then on top of that, they're all heading to North Carolina. So it's like they're coming after us, but we're protected by the mountains. Just can't get away from these things. But again, I hope everyone's doing well and, picking up the pieces just fine. And yeah, ready for some Computer America because we have a great show planned for you where the entire show today is dedicated to our guest, who is our science and tech trends correspondent. Right there, you can see him waving. And for everyone out there listening on the radio, you will, of course, hear him in just a moment. But before you do, a couple of things, including computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find the cheat notes for today, which are going to be super helpful. You will also find any articles, reviews, videos, anything that we talk about here today will be included in the cheat notes, in the show notes at computeramerica.com. Also, be sure to check out the social media contest brought to you by Logitech, as well as the live video feed, which has the chat room over at twitch.tv/Computer America. All that and more at our website. We're going to be uploading some new content here soon. But yeah, until then, hey, sit back and relax and enjoy our show. So without further ado, let's go ahead, bring on our guest. And as we said before, Ralph Bond, he is a longtime Computer America correspondent. We first met him when he was working at Intel, then spent a long stint over at Autodesk. There we go. Who makes the I was stuck on AutoCAD, but over at Autodesk, and now he works for himself as well as doing podcast production in his spare time and just enjoying life. So, Ralph, welcome back onto the program. Mm-hmm. Oh.
I can't imagine the devastation of that area. I'm so sorry about that and hoping for the best for all those folks down there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, really, some of the pictures coming through. It's so weird that, there's so much coastline that you think, oh, Florida, they're used to hurricanes, everyone's prepared. But, these hurricanes, they're deviating to paths that, places haven't seen a hurricane in 50, 60, 70 years. No one in their lifetime has probably seen a hurricane. So to get one that powerful in these weird places, you're never prepared for something like that. So
Yeah.
yep, I'm right there with you. Condolences, but at the same time, I think a lot of people rode out the storm very, very well, and we hope they're doing well. So before we get started, Craig does still listen to the show as we do it. He is still our kind of mastermind overlord kind of deal, and he has been bugging me all week because we had last Sunday we went to the theaters and we went to go see the movie Venom.
Ralph, did you like it?
Yeah, Craig and Ralph and myself, we used to talk movies every once in a while.
Yes.
And I'm not sure, Ralph, if you had a chance to see it, but yes, Craig and I went to go see Venom, and it was a pretty good movie. Like every online review I read, it's like this is the year that superhero and comic book movies are going to be played out. There's going to be that exhaustion to set in, and yet I walk into Venom, which is a pretty new franchise. I mean, he's well known, but his first movie, and I walked out of there and I was like, I'm not bored of superheroes yet, even though I know he's like an anti-hero, but that was not boring. It was a lot of fun.
Well, yeah, and in fact, to your point, for how many decades have we heard comic books are going to go away, and that whole genre is going to disappear, and this and that and the other, and I'm with you. I think in a world that's so horrible, I think it's so great to be able to go off and watch Thor do ridiculous, impossible things, or any of you pick your superhero that's your favorite, and I just think there'll be a never-ending desire for that kind of escape. Right,
and no end in sight, at least. So Venom, the movie in particular, I'm guessing that you have not had a chance to go see it yourself. No. And really, I mean, I think a lot of people didn't prepare to go see it. I mean, the initial reviews were kind of mixed, and I walked in there kind of expecting kind of a B rate for the Marvel universe, and it was really good. Like. I think it's doing successful because word of mouth made it successful, not just any kind of weird advertising campaign. So if anyone out there, if you hadn't had a chance to go see it, take my recommendation with a grain of salt, but I was not bored. I did not fall asleep. It was a very entertaining movie. So,
well, and here's the question I have for you for all those kind of movies. That this is sort of my measure, and we've talked about this before. Was the movie great because the computer effects and special effects were fantastic, or was it great because the story was great and enhanced by the computer animation and graphics?
Why I find this question so interesting from Ralph is because, as I said, Autodesk had their fingers in a lot of pies when it came to CGI and big Hollywood movies. Your company, that company did a lot of work and really put in a lot of expertise. The special effects, I mean, they really enhance the look. Venom,
there it is.
He's a giant 7-8 foot inky black amorphic monster, and it's very hard to do that in you can't make that be a practical effect, so it has to be special effect, and it really added to it. You never looked at it and said, that's so cheesy, that's so goofy. It's like, no, that's just the way it has to be. And you're right. The CGI looked good because, when a motorcycle blew up, the motorcycle blew up. That was a practical effect. But then the special effect added to it, and I loved it. So.
Yeah, and not to labor this point too much because we want to jump into our stories, but I think the classic example of where computer graphics went astray, became the subject instead of enhancing the story, is the Pirates of the Caribbean series. The first movie was, in my opinion, delightful because you cared about the characters. It was funny. It had the characters and the stories with number one, and the graphics and the special effects supplemented or enhanced the story. Then the second and third installments, it was just all glitz and special effects, and you lost the characters.
It's almost like, and trust me, we're going to move off movies here in a second, but it's Friday, so we're going to relax and have fun. Yes. But I will say that the first one, it really does seem that way a lot of times. I know that Disney, did give it a pretty good budget, but after they saw that it was printing money left and right, it seems like the second and third one, the directors had carte blanche to just say, okay, whatever the budget, whatever you need, make this the best movie you can. And sometimes we see that happen. They rely too much on post effects instead of practical effects. So
instead of the story. Remember, to me, it's always the story first. And then how do you enhance the story?
And then even on top of that, I mean, look at no, actually, before we even do that, just forget it. I was about to bring up Jurassic Park, which everyone does, and I'm not even gonna go there. We're just gonna jump right into our news story. So everyone, Ralph Bond, he joins us here the second Friday of every month. If you want to set your clock to it, he joins us to talk about science and tech trends, science and tech and science and medicine.
Yep.
Just kind of the positive aspects, and in most of the stories, the positive aspects that technology is helping to, make our lives better. Because a lot of times, we talked about social media lately, and it's like, sometimes technology can really do harm, but not with Ralph. And I think this really shines in our first story. And I don't know why. Maybe I'm just super hungry, and this one just really tickled a funny spot. But when I make spaghetti, I, like many people, I used to keep it long, but then, people in the house didn't like it long and whatever. So now I snap it in half. And I won't lie, when I snap it in half, pieces and fragments of that noodle go everywhere. It's hard to contain. The first story answers a lot of questions.
Yes, it does. And this is important stuff, right?
Yeah.
Actually, at the end, I'll give you a preview. At the end of the story, you learn a little bit of how this could actually truly be meaningful. But here's the story. It comes from Science News for Students, which if you're not familiar with this outlet, is wonderful. ScienceNewsForStudents.org. Check it out. It's just great all the way around. And the headline for this story is "The Perfect Spaghetti Snap Starts with a Twist. Novel Machine reveals secret to cleanly breaking the dry pasta in half." Now, this is important stuff, and you're going to find out from a very prestigious research outfit. The story's by Maria Temming. And again, if you have the show notes, and Ben's right, please get the show notes because it has the links, pictures, and the text that we're going to read for you today. And sometimes we don't get through all the stories, and you can go back and pick up where we left off. So here's a story. It says, when boiling a pot of spaghetti for dinner, some people like to first snap the dried pasta in half. My wife never does that. We go for the long strands. Shorter strands can be easier to eat, and long strands can splatter sauce. But simply bending a stick of spaghetti in half usually shatters it into 3 or more pieces, as Ben knows. That can leave you sweeping up shards from the kitchen counter and floor. Now, researchers say they have found the secret to neatly breaking spaghetti. Ready for it?
Mm-hmm.
Twist before bending. When a piece of dry spaghetti breaks, vibrations rattle the two halves. This can make smaller pieces splinter off. You now end up with more than 2 pieces. So, Vishal Patil is a mathematician at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge. Stop and think about this. Here's a genius from MIT thinking about this, but there's going to be a meaning to this in the end. It goes beyond just the silly thing of spaghetti, right?
But you do have that mental image of a professor walking through seeing grad students, and has the entire University of Cambridge and Massachusetts, and it's like, hey, what do you got there? And it's like, oh, pasta. He's like, oh, making dinner. It's like, no. This is my research for the next year. It's gonna be good.
Exactly. I love it. So he and his colleagues used a custom-made spaghetti snapper to explore a better way to break pasta. And again, the show notes have a picture of this from the articles. Another reason why you want to get those show notes. Researchers watched the device break hundreds of pieces of pasta. Then they built a computer model to simulate what was happening. The computer program helped them compare different combinations of bending and twisting the pasta, the dry pasta. When a dry piece of spaghetti is twisted first, it doesn't bend as much before breaking. That twisting seems to weaken the vibrations that rattle the spaghetti halves after snapping, and this prevents extra breaks. Now, again, you may be thinking, oh, that's nice, but I mean, really, what's the point? Well, hang on, we're going to get to that. The exact amount of twist needed to get a clean break depends on the length of the shaft of the pasta. For a typical piece of spaghetti, 24 centimeters or 9.4 inches long, to crack neatly in two, it must be twisted at least, and this surprised me, 250 degrees. That's quite a lot. That's almost 3/4 of a turn. A full turn, of course, would be 360 degrees.
Right.
Now, Patil's team reported its results online on the 13th of August in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Can you imagine people reading that and finding the spaghetti story? I love it. This finding may not be much practical help in the kitchen. Your fingertips might quickly get sore from pinching spaghetti hard enough to twist it. And Patel's group has no plans to sell its spaghetti snapper in stores. Even if it did, twisting and bending each piece of pasta one by one prior to cooking is a slow way to prepare your dinner. Still, the bend and twist trick has its value. Here we go. It might one day help researchers understand how other rods or structures like a spaghetti strand, from pole vault sticks to nanotubes. Now remember, a nanotube is a microscopic tube whose diameter is measured in nanometers, and nanotubes are being investigated as semiconductors and for uses in nanotechnology. So here's the twist, no pun intended, to this story. It could have potential real world value. And by the way, the show notes have a link to a video, and Ben, maybe you've had a chance to look at the video.
It, right? Yeah.
It's good. It's hilarious. I love it. And I just think, again, silly on the surface, potentially very meaningful once you get past the silliness about its application in real world problems.
Yeah, I'm hoping that I can still take a fistful of pasta and kind of twist them myself and then try to break them. I'm hoping that does something because, like, if nothing else, I mean, if anyone out there just likes cooking, just seeing the video that they put up of an actual piece of spaghetti. When they break it, you break it and you get these tiny little slivers. And I'm not saying that those aren't tasty. I mean, they're just as tasty as the others. But, just having one noodle instead of four, micro noodles, that's, there's something to be said for that. So it is silly, and it's not just about pasta, like you said. This is going to help many, many other applications for anything with a similar structure. But, hey, that doesn't mean you can't up your pasta game. So,
and here's another physics possibility. Mm-hmm. What happens if you take a dry strand or multiple strands of pasta, and what if you had some kind of pasta snapping or pasta cutting guillotine? Now, would the same principles of vibration happen as when one tries to bend it dry without twisting? Would it still fragment into shards? Now, there's an experiment for somebody out there to try. I suspect it'll have the same vibratory impact, maybe, but then we're talking about cutting, not, bending and snapping.
I would think that it would have something similar because, bending, it makes that kind of art kind of deal, and as opposed to a guillotine where you're putting a lot of pressure right in the middle, where I would expect it to kind of shatter, because pasta's brittle, it would shatter where the guillotine would come down into little pieces, but be much more whole than an arc. But I'm thinking way too much about pasta, and I am super hungry now.
Well, how about a pasta saw? What if you put a bunch of things and had a saw that would just gently cut through the handful of pasta. Okay, enough pasta.
enough pasta. Even though we may come up with our best idea yet. But I will say that story number 2, if you were, sick of pasta, how about we move on to maybe something that could turn that box of pasta into a robot? Potentially. Yes. I don't know what kind of robot you would want to make with that, but and actually, did you include the video? I need to browse through the entirety of your show notes.
Yes, it's embedded in the story. There wasn't a link in there, but if you go to the story.
Well, not that particular one, but I think yesterday or the day before, if you recall Boston Dynamics, they made like the humanoid kind of robot and the dog kind of robot with very natural movement.
Right.
They just came out with a new video of a robot doing parkour.
Oh, I see. Cool.
Yeah, so maybe we'll talk about that in just after this one, but I digress. Robots are made to be, kind of automated locomotive, kind of deal. But the story you have here is turning everyday objects into pseudo robots, or kind of after the fact, adding robotics to them, which is a completely different field.
Well, yeah, and this story is really interesting too. There's layers to this story. You'll find out what the motivation was for this and so forth. On the surface, it seems trivial, but again, it's another one of those stories, like our spaghetti story, seems silly at the top end, but has real meaning as you go deeper into the story. So here's the deal. The story is from The Verge. It's a story by James Vincent. The headline is, "This robotic skin can bring your stuffed toys to life," which seems like a silly little joke kind of headline. And on the surface, it's silly initially, but profound as you go deeper into the story. So once again, if you have the show notes, you can see the picture, you can see the link and so on, and you'll see there's a great little video embedded in the story. You need to go to the story, though, to see the video itself. So here's the story. It says, when designing tools for use in space, versatility is important. Each pound of material you bring with you is going to cost extra, so having one tool that can do multiple jobs is handy. Plus, it's space. You never know what situations you're going to come across. Boy, isn't that the truth of that recent explosion, the problem they had with that launch where the Russian and American
scary,
astronaut
right?
had to bail. That was a very scary thing. Thank goodness those guys are okay. Anyway, I digress. These demands inspired Yale roboticist Rebecca Kramer Bottiglio, I think is how you say it, Bottiglio, and her team to develop what is basically robotic skin, a flexible material that can animate any inanimate object. Well, let's qualify that. If it's a piece of stone, you're probably not going to animate that, but you'll bear with it. You'll see
some degree of flexibility, probably.
Well,
right.
I guess so. Maybe make it wiggle or something. The material's proper name is OmniSkin, and it's made from sheets of elastic studded with sensors and actuators. It can be fixed in place with zip ties, or other basic ties, and it's modular, meaning each small sheet can be attached to any other in a number of ways. And here's a quote. "They're like Legos," Kramer Bottiglio told the Smithsonian.com. "They can be combined, separated, and recombined in different patterns." Now, Kramer Bottiglio and the rest of her team at Yale described OmniSkin in a paper, and we have a link for that in the show notes, right? Published last week in Science Robotics. Now, this story was published late September 24, but you can use that link to go and see the actual original article. It goes on to say they show how the material can be put to a number of uses, turning foam arms into a robotic grabbing claw, constructing freestanding objects, and augmenting human clothing. Ding, ding, ding. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. They even used it to make a stuffed toy walk, wrapping sheets of OmniSkin around a toy horse's legs to make it jitter across a tabletop. That's the thing that's shown in the video and so forth. Obviously, this sort of material doesn't match up to regular robotics when it comes to attributes like power and durability. You couldn't build a Mars rover out of OmniSkin, for example. Well, of course not. But the design was inspired, and this is important, the design was inspired by a solicitation from NASA, which was looking for new soft robotics that might be useful in space. That's why OmniSkin is lightweight and reusable. So this wasn't just a flight of fancy like they were sitting around the lab and going, oh, let's make a little toy move around. No, this was motivated by a solicitation from NASA. So that's why OmniSkin is lightweight and reusable. Astronauts can't plan for every event, so having adaptable tools is important. Here's a quote from Kramer Bottiglio, the research leader on this. Quote, "Future astronauts exploring another planet could quickly construct a robot using the robotic skins wrapped around whatever deformable materials they have access to and stick a camera on it, and then deploy the robot for exploration of small or dangerous spaces." So see, now it's all coming together from silly toy application to something that potentially has great meaning. Goes on to say, other solutions are also being developed in this area, such as the Super Ball bot. You've got to click that link, everybody, and see this. This is fascinating. A NASA project to build a lightweight robot from connected poles and wires. You must see that video. Run, don't walk. That one. It looks like a tangled mess. Now they're talking about the Super Bowl bot, like a tangled mess, but the resulting object is resilient enough to be fired at the planet's surface without damage and then flexible enough to navigate over the rocky terrain. So that was a little segue there, but well worth the trip to go off and visit that for a bit. Concluding here, it says OmniSkin could have similar uses in the future. It turns that building tools to meet the unexpected demands of space means coming up with equally unexpected designs. Couldn't have said it better. I think that's great. And, that Super Bowl bot. Are you looking at the video of that thing?
I am. And
that's a whole story in itself that's just fabulous, I think.
That thing is like, if anyone out there went to, in high school or middle school, you did that, the egg drop challenge.
Yes.
I guess it's kind of like if you said, okay, protect an egg, like some kind of payload, because they showed like, some kind of computer system in the middle of it. And they said, protect this, but use only tension and robotics and, metal. And you think, how do you do that? And they found a way. This thing is incredible.
Isn't that amazing? That's a wonderful story in its own right. We could have done a whole segment on that, but reader or listeners, please check that out. It's so important.
Right. So, all right. So that one and I did like the OmniSkin. I do like the idea of just having that and being able to apply it to people, to objects, to to itself. And by the way, some of those videos of the I guess it's like pool noodle or like pipe insulation, and they had it kind of maneuvering different ways across the screen.
Yeah.
Some of those are pretty funny. I won't lie.
Oh,
they're very entertaining. But overall, very very cool story. Ralph, we have time to get into, probably not finish, another story. We're gonna go ahead and go with number 3, and Queen Elizabeth I. Never met her. Yeah. I'm assuming she's a lovely lady.
Oh yeah, she was something else.
So talk about this one.
Yeah. So this is a story from Engadget. We'll get it started, and then we'll do the break and come back and pick up. From Engadget, a story by Jamie Rigg. The headline: Animatronic Queen Elizabeth I is one creepy but realistic portrait. So I'm always interested in animatronics because many years ago at the Anaheim Disneyland, they had the animatronic Lincoln who would get up and do excerpts from the Gettysburg Address. And it was an incredible forerunner. Do you remember that?
I never actually saw it myself, but I remember seeing videos of it. And that and this one, I'm sure too, to a certain extent, really shows that you think robotics, you think applied engineering, mechanical engineering, maybe software for the movements and things like that. But what this kind of application that really shows it off best, you need an artist to make Lincoln. To make Lincoln look like Lincoln. So I think this is going to follow the same thing.
I wanted to send a salute to the Imagineers, the Disney Imagineers, who decades ago pulled off a stunning achievement. And there's videos, I'm sure, on YouTube of this, friends. I don't think it's still out there. I don't think it's still at the park anymore. I don't know. Maybe it is. If it is, that's great. Right. Maybe they've updated it, but it was a stunning achievement. So again, we'll probably need to pick up on the other side, but let's get started anyway. So again, animatronic Queen Elizabeth I is one creepy but realistic portrait. Queen Elizabeth I is widely thought to have carefully controlled her image. She was a forerunner in PR, so to speak. She would sit for portraits only until her face was drawn, which she would personally approve. In later years, it was important for the heirless queen, remember she didn't have any children, to appear youthful. That was part of her politics, to remain kind of eternally youthful. By the way, Elizabeth I was Queen of England and Ireland from 17 November 1558 until her death on 24 March 1603, if you want to know what time period we're talking about. Now, she used agelessness as a symbol of power. Conversely, other unsanctioned depictions of Elizabeth I have verged on the grotesque. So when artist Matt Collishaw was commissioned by the Royal Museum's Greenwich to create something to complement her famous Armada portrait, and that's a very famous painting of her, you'll see it in the article, he went as realistic as possible. Armed with historical descriptions of the Queen, digital scans of her many portraits, and a cast of the sculpture atop her tomb, Collishaw worked with Hollywood-level effects designers to create an eerily lifelike animatronic face. This is really creepy and weird and kind of cool. The new installation is called The Mask of Youth, and it's now open to the public at Queen's House on the Royal Museum's Greenwich site in London. Or is that Greenwich? Did they say Greenwich or Greenwich? Not sure.
Greenwich? Probably
is that
probably Greenwich, because Greenwich would just be one E. So
yeah, that's right. Okay,
yeah, so. And actually, Ralph, that's actually a pretty good spot that we're going to stop. We're going to pick this up right after the Museums of Greenwich site in London. And and then we're going to pick it up right there. So everyone, thank you for tuning in to Computer America. You are listening to Ralph Bond and, of course, myself, as we do all these different stories. And by the way, just to tease some of the other ones we have coming up, including, let's see, a new ultra-fast laser. Lasers are always fun. And 30 billion times a second. So we have lasers, we have 8K TVs, and by the way, we touched on the Samsung 85-inch TV. Looking forward to talking about that with you. But if you thought 4K was something you still wanted, check out 8K. That and a ton more stories. Again, computeramerica.com has them all in the show notes right there. So the music, which should start... There you go. So the music which is playing right now means that we will take a break. We'll be right back. More Ralph Bond, more Computer America, and everyone, of course, stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour as we continue on here. And there's Ralph. Ralph is doing well. And let's see. So 1 second. There we go. All right. So we are doing, of course, all these different science tech trends. And this one that we were just talking about, let's see, look for the keyword Greenwich. And we were just talking about Queen Elizabeth I. And as you said, very protective of her image. So I think that in some weird way, she would be very happy that she gets to live on agelessly and forever as an animatronic. So this is very interesting.
That's wild. And hey, you know what? We were talking about Greenwich versus Greenwich and what's have you. So Greenwich mean time. Am I saying that right?
Yep. Yep.
So Greenwich and that's actually spelled green, W-I-C-H. So I'm guessing it is Royal Museum's Greenwich site.
It probably is Greenwich. Then I stand
corrected.
There you go. Okay,
I did it. Well, I
good
did a little
research.
check while the break was on. I went off and did a little searching on the web here, and I thought, oh, okay, I think we're safe. We'll switch back now, and we'll say Royal Museum's Greenwich site in London. That's like Worcestershire, Worcestershire is really what it is, but it's all smushed together into Worcestershire. Anyway, okay, so the new installation, again, friends, if you're just joining us, we're talking about this animatronics face of Queen Elizabeth I. It's really a great story, and you can see that in the show notes and see the pictures and all this. We're going to pick up with this, though. The new installation is called The Mask of Youth, and it's now open to the public at the Queen's House on the Royal Museum's Greenwich site in London. It attempts to recreate how Elizabeth I actually looked at the time of the Armada portrait. And again, the Armada portrait's a very famous commissioned painting approved by the Queen, painting of herself that you can see in the show notes and when you go to the article. 3 different versions of the painting exist, one of which came under the care of the Royal Museum's Greenwich 2 years ago and has since undergone a 6-month restoration. Wow. The 2 depictions of the Queen are exhibited face to face, and the Mask of Youth, that's the animatronics, is mounted on a mirror. So the Armada portrait always remains in view. It's a meeting of old and new, of real and unreal. That's part of why I like this story, because it's such an interesting way of using animatronics, putting it into the context of another real object, which I think is fun. Goes on to say, it's unlikely that many visitors to the installation will have seen film-grade animatronics like this before, including myself. That's the author speaking there, of course. Between the eyes, teeth, and skin, the face is frighteningly lifelike. There's even a calmness, there's even a clamminess to the brow and bridge of the nose, a few almost transparent hairs at the corner of the mouth. The face blinks and peers around the room as if the silent Queen were surveying her court. Ooh, I'd love to see this. As Royal Museum's Greenwich describes it, Collingshaw's work explores the different sides of the Queen, both real and imagined, and grapples with notions of mortality, the manipulation of truth, political propaganda, and the extent to which female power is tied to the appearance and youth. Interesting comment there. Collinshaw has left the machinery behind the mask exposed. Now, that's shown in the picture in the show notes, folks, and that's one of the reasons I like this story so much, because the magic of the mechanics is visible. So Collinshaw left the machinery behind the mask exposed, nodding to the gulf between person and public image. The use of technology here also highlights an interesting message of how much and yet how little has changed in terms of, the importance of youth and all kinds of dynamics about the female perception of beauty and value, I think, over time and so forth. It's a kind of interesting comment that, in a way, it reflects how little has changed in some respects from her time period. Anyway, Queen Elizabeth I lived centuries before Photoshop models and carefully curated Instagram feeds, of course. She was a true monarch. Her word was law, but she still felt it necessary to game public perception by manipulating her image to appear youthful and commanding. The pressure for people to look a certain way, particularly women, was then as it is now, which I thought was an interesting. There's layers to the story I like, kind of social commentary plus technology plus animatronics. It was interesting, and check it out. It's a good one.
Yeah, and no, very, very interesting, and of course done by an artist, and obviously there's that second meaning you were getting at, and of course I'm not going to wax philosophical right now, but I was just thinking that, and it looks like the miniseries is already over, because I remember there being a miniseries about Elizabeth I.
Yes.
Actually came out last year, so it's no longer airing. I thought, wow, this is some very solid advertising, but no, it looks like this is more advertising for the what's it called? Not refurbishment, but the everything that they did for the museum exhibit itself. So
Right.
This is just kind of adding to it.
Yeah, it's a very
cool.
clever. It's a very clever way to take a very old painting, in this case the Armada portrait, and augment it. It's sort of like I was talking before about, is a story augmented by computer graphics or technology, or is that the story? Is it all just technology and weak story? So I think in this case you have a beautiful harmonious binding of the two.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with the first. I mean, I think a lot of people would argue that movies such as, let's just take Avatar, the most obvious one, they're kind of tech demos. The movie hasn't played out. The movie, is directly compared to like Dances with Wolves and blah blah blah.
Right, exactly,
right. The story's been said 100 different times, but as a tech demo, it does its job very effectively. It's something you've never seen before. And this, and this one again, maybe straddling that line. But I will say that between animatronics and my personal favorite, if we're just looking at bringing exhibits to life, which this is what it's trying to do, I'm also looking forward to the day when you have virtual reality experiences, with artificial intelligence who are CGI and completely within virtual reality. And they're taught how to act like themselves. They're taught facts about themselves so that you can meet historical figures instead of just reading about them. So,
that's a great vision. That would be awesome.
It's obviously, technology can go a lot of different ways, but I'm glad that this gentleman, really put a lot of work into this one. So there's that one. And why don't we go ahead? Story number 4. I like it. I don't know. Let's see how. Yeah, it's actually a little bit long.
Yes.
I'll leave it up to you. We can either do story number 4, which I like, or we can skip on over to story number 5 because
let's pop over to 5, and if we have time, we can come back to 4 because it is a bit long, but it's a good story, friends, to go check out.
Yeah, and that's something that we didn't mention at the beginning, which is, odds are Ralph finds about 10 stories every month, and we never get to all of them. So, towards the later part of the show, we like to hunt and pick our favorites, and then we'll, but if you want to check out any of these, they are all available still in the show notes. So, story number 5.
Okay, so let's pop down to story number 5, which has a pretty wide appeal. And I'm jumping ahead of myself.
Was that a pun? A wide appeal because it's widescreen?
Sure, of course.
Okay.
So sure. This comes from Ars Technica, which is a wonderful outlet. A story by Samuel Axon, and the headline is Samsung's obscenely expensive 85-inch 8K TV ships later this month. Now, the story was posted on October the 5th, so that's later this month as we speak. And 8K, I don't even have a 4K TV yet. I mean, come on. Anyway.
Do you really not? I mean, not to pick on you, but like, I feel like any TV that, in some cases, let's say you bought a television the year before 4K became available, you wouldn't have a need for a 4K TV. I get it. You have a perfectly good TV. But if you've went TV shopping over the past 2-3 years,
it'd be inexcusable.
Like that's about all they have.
Agreed.
So
I agree. It's clearly the path to go.
Right.
Well, and also you bring up a very interesting topic: need and want.
Yeah.
And this was made very, very clear to me early in my marriage: need and want. I want 4K, but I don't absolutely need it immediately because I have a perfectly good 4K TV and projector and all this good stuff.
Right.
What I'd love to have is a 4K projector. That'd be really cool. Anyway, we digress. So the story again: Samsung's obscenely expensive 85-inch 8K TV ships later this month, and here's the story: $15,000. That's what it will cost you to buy Samsung's first 8K TV in the United States later this month.
Is that all?
Is that all? If only there were something in 8K you could watch on it.
True.
And I'll just insert a little note here. 8K in 8K UHD ultra high def refers to the horizontal resolution of 7,680 pixels, forming the total image dimensions of 7,680 pixels by 4,320, also known as 4320p, which refers to the vertical resolution. So just a little explanation of what we're talking about.
And that's very important because when you talk about certain things, I mean, it's not readily apparent by the names themselves. Tech people, they're very good at naming things that are technically relevant but aren't kind of market-wise, or I'm sorry,
Right.
marketing-wise, yeah, or human. So like take for instance, and we're gonna move on here, but like just take for instance 1080p, which is standard
Yes.
high definition,
Yes.
and go to 4K. You think that double the resolution because it's kind of the next generation thing, but no, it's actually 4 times the resolution. A 4K TV is as if you were taking 4 screens and putting them in a 2x2 array. In terms of pixel, or I'm sorry, in terms of just pixels. So, 8K is as if you were to take, 4 4K TVs and line them up 2x2 next to each other. It's a lot of pixels.
Oh yeah, and another thing that I always love is P versus I, progressive versus interlace, right?
Yeah.
And that you have to go back into the history of television to get into that, and we won't do that right now. But I mean, you're right. In all the literature, all the advertisements, all the sort of stuff, they throw out this stuff, and consumers are just going, eh? And they go to the Costco and they go, oh, I guess I want one of them things.
Right.
And it's not their fault. It's the technologists often don't explain things and don't give you a sense of the scale, the importance of what's going on. Anyway, back to the story. The Samsung Q900R 8K TV will arrive the week of October 28, according to a recent announcement from Samsung. It measures 85 inches, though smaller versions, 65 and 75 inches at least, are expected as well. Now, in some respects, the QLED set resembles the company's current 4K flagship, which was positively reviewed model called the Q9F. It has the big-ticket Samsung bells and whistles like ambient mode, which lets you input a photo to make your TV show an image that makes it blend into the wall behind it. Ooh, I've never seen this before. That's curious, isn't it? Now, the TV can push up to 4,000 nits of brightness, and I'm going to get into what that is in a moment here. So again, the TV can push up to 4,000 nits of brightness. It naturally does HDR. The new HDR 10 Plus standard is supported, and the resolution really is 8K. That's 33 million pixels if you're interested in counting. If you want a TV to make you the first person on your block with 8K, this is the one to splurge on. Unfortunately, though, there's not really any 8K content to show it off. Now, here's a little side note here for everybody here. In lighting, the nit, N-I-T, is a unit of visible light intensity commonly used to specify, the brightness of a cathode ray tube. That's your old TV, right? Most of you are still old enough to remember this. Yeah. Or liquid crystal display, computer display. 1 nit is equivalent to 1 candela per square meter. The candela, formerly called candle power, old farts like me know what this is approximately the amount of light emitted by a common tallow candle, right? High dynamic range, the other buzzword that was thrown in there previously, HDR, is the latest buzz phrase in the TV world, with manufacturers and content creators alike suggesting it could bring noticeable leaps in picture performance. Every few years, manufacturers come up with a whole bunch of new tech, most of which has a confusing acronym. To our point, you and I, Ben, were just talking about a moment ago. Ultra high def and 4K and HDCP, it goes on and on, right? But back to the story. But according to Samsung, you don't need native 8K content to enjoy the TV. That's because the company claims that the set uses artificial intelligence to scale 720p, 1080p, and 4K images up, and makes them look better than they would on 4K TVs thanks to the TV's so-called quantum processor 8K, which despite the name is definitely not quantum computing technology, of course not. We generally did not find similar claims from manufacturers to be true in the early transition from 1080p to 4K, meaning the upscaling of 1080p content to 4K. So the author's saying, so we're not inclined to believe it this time either. That said, Tech Radar seemed to be impressed. That's another review outfit. You can go check those guys out online as well. There are other limitations. The TV is not certified for HDMI 2.1, and the 8K mode is limited to 30 frames per second. eARC, that's lowercase e and then ARC uppercase, eARC is also not supported, and it won't work with YouTube's 8K content, which is almost the only 8K content out there. So there is some, but not much. And then here's a little note. The E in eARC stands for Enhanced audio return channel and is a new standard feature of HDMI 2.1 that aims to provide the best possible audio resolution from your TV. Now, going back onto the story here, the TV is huge because there's no point in having a smaller 8K TV. People wouldn't be able to see the difference between 4K and 8K on a 50-inch set, for example. Never mind the fact that most U.S. households still don't even have 4K TVs, so I'm not alone. The percentage was around 25% in January of this year and could hit 50% sometime in 2019, according to the report the Consumer Technology Association published earlier this year. The TV is not the only 8K TV coming up, nor is it Samsung's craziest TV, but it's probably not worth it for most people. That is, with a $15,000 price tag, you bet. Flat Panels HD has a good deep dive on the TV from Samsung's IFA, that's that big show in Berlin, 2018 presentation, if you need help deciding whether to take this very costly plunge or not. So a fun story, kind of an interesting thing about the technology. Again, I think where this makes sense, Ben, is in potentially enormous theater, real theater scale, widescreen, huge screen displays, getting up to 8K. That's the kind of thing. And if you're down the road when the costs come down and so forth for home theater situations, okay, I can see it. But for general purpose people, I think a lot of us like me have even yet to make the 4K jump.
Well, to put this into some kind of perspective, IMAX, you know them? They're
Sure.
kind of marketed as like the movie theater on steroids. Probably the best picture that anyone is going to see, kind of commercially available. I believe their content is recorded at 12K, like 12K resolution.
Wow.
So if you want like an IMAX quality or I guess, kind of resolution, you're looking at 8K plus, some, I'm sure like 8K to 12K is just kind of wider format as opposed to kind of any increase like that. But you're right. I mean, this is going to be for big movie buffs. This is going to be for people who really enjoy kind of the cinema experience. Although I will say the first major content that's going to come out in 8K, quick trivia fact, they said it, I think like a year or two ago. Do you know what event is going to be the first 8K, or I'm sorry, the first 8K resolution content shot?
I have no idea. What is it?
The 2020 Olympics in Japan has promised to be an 8K resolution stream that's going to be available to all cable companies.
Oh yeah.
So that's
and by the way, talking about sports and resolution, I one of the areas of viewing, and maybe your experience too, it's an NFL football game or a college football game, and the camera goes long to show the whole field and both teams, and boy, that's when I want the biggest screen I can get and the best resolution, because that's where resolution so often, and it's fair, consumers will say, well, I can't really see a whole lot of difference here. I mean, it's nice, but I mean, what? But boy, with sports, especially a game like football where you have that long view and you're looking at this huge area of field and the little players look like little tiny, figures, right? That's where I want that resolution. And I think that could be a killer app, so to speak, for this high resolution stuff.
But I mean, that's not unusual either. Sports in general have always been, kind of cutting edge when it came to when it came to new technology. I mean, 3D TV, yes, it's still talked about, and people were like, "Oh, that was such a failure, such a flop," but it hung on longer than it probably should have in the realm of sports. I mean, 3D, recording cameras were used in the NFL for a long time to kind of give you, some of those weird angles that they're able to kind of zoom around a field. So 8K, not like, if anything else, it's kind of future-proofing. I'm not going to say that this is mandatory. At the beginning of the story, you said, what do you need versus what do you want? 8K, and I'm sure that this particular Samsung TV, by the time 8K content is ubiquitous enough that you are going to say, I need an 8K TV, every other aspect of this television will probably be out of date as well. When it comes to HDR, when it comes to the refresh rate, when it comes to the brightness, when it comes to just any other aspect of the television, it's all going to be out of date. So I think this is going to be for anyone who does not care about money, wants to spite their child. Instead of starting a college fund, they go out and buy a TV. Really, this is a very niche product, and they know that. But hey, it's Samsung claiming the throne, saying we have the best TV on the market. You can't afford it, but check us out. We're the best.
Well, yeah, and Ben, all you have to do is roll the history tape of our collective experiences back to the days when you and I and Greg were talking about 4K TVs.
Yeah.
Thinking, do I really need this? Is this really, that great? I'm pretty happy with 1080p, and my life is good, but look at what's happened.
Yeah,
over time,
and it did not take long. I mean, the transition from from standard definition to high definition, that took about 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah, that's right. That was slow.
Yeah, that took a long time. But then the transition from HD to 4K, like you said, 25% this year. It's been out, probably widely available for 3-4 years. And as the article said, next year is going to be 50%.
50%.
So, in 3 years going to 50% market share, that is incredible. That's very, very fast. So
absolutely.
That's that article. I like talking about that one because, hey, it was technology to an extreme. Probably not the extreme you want, but it's there. So we have time for just one more story. Ralph, did any of these really tickle your fancy?
Gosh, let's take a peek here. This AR smart glasses is kind of cool, but let me scroll down and see if there's something that's fairly short that we might be able to. Story
number 8. That actually kind of applies because we have to hit the right buttons and we have to turn the right knobs. But Computer America should be available on Deezer here shortly.
Good.
One of our broadcasting platforms actually supports it now, so we just have to flip a switch. And hey, maybe if you're in the mood for Computer America, maybe Deezer, although it says song, so I'm not holding my breath, but maybe Deezer could throw on some Computer America for you. So story number 8.
There you go. Depending on your mood.
Right.
And that'll make sense when I tell you the story here. So this is from Engadget, from one of my favorite writers, John Fingus. And the headline is Deezer's, that's the music service, of course, AI, so Deezer's artificial intelligence mood detection could lead to smarter song playlists.
By the way, before we get started, John Fingus, if you are out there listening, I find your articles every single day. We browse Engadget, whenever we do computer technology news. I am not convinced he is a real person. If you are listening, John, and you want to come on the show and talk with me, that's perfectly fine. But until then, you are, I think, the rumors of Shakespeare, that he was an entire troupe, an entire playwright company that, kind of published under one name. I think John Fingus is a dozen people because he does so much work and does such good work. I can't believe it's just a single person. So that was an aside, but
we're throwing down the gauntlet, baby.
Tweet him. But yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, well, regardless, whether it's one person or many or whatever, I love the articles. I'm with you on that 100%. So again, Deezer's AI mood detection could lead to smarter song playlists. And here's the scoop. It says, astute listeners know that you can't gauge a song's mood solely through the instrumentation or the lyrics. But that's often what AI has been asked to do. And that's not much help if you're trying to sift through millions of songs to find something melancholic or upbeat. Thankfully, Deezer's researchers have found a way to make that AI consider the totality of a song before passing judgment. They've developed a deep learning system that gauges the emotion and intensity of a track by relying on a wide variety of data, not just a single factor like lyrics. So this is also like machine learning, kind of. Deezer trained the AI using raw audio signals, linguistic context reconstruction models, and a 1 million song database that aggregates the last.fm tags describing tunes, such as calm or sad.
And Ralph, I'm actually going to kind of stop you there, so that we can kind of talk about this, because we have about a minute left, and then we're going to go. But I do want to say that anytime I'm starting to hear articles about deep learning, we've had a number of companies here on the show that actually do it themselves. I just read an article that was, that was kind of interesting. I think it was like one of the research, MIT or whatever, one of the research colleges, they actually had to kill theirs. Or maybe it was like Amazon or one of the big companies. But anyways, someone had an AI that was trained to look for and evaluate programmers. They would send in their application, they would read the application, and they actually had to kill it because, and I say kill it, even though it's just destroying the data set. It was being sexist. It was preferring male candidates over female, and the researchers could not stop it. And they said that the reason was because 90% of the applications were from men, and men use different languages within their applications, such as executing certain kinds of code, data, coding, or taking control. Essentially, because the data was corrupt, it was 10% female, 90% male, it valued the male way of speaking over the female. And I use that as an example to say that, not that it's not a cool technology, not that it won't work, but it's more data can be poisonous to begin with. So take this with a grain of salt, and it will get better over time, but it's not flawless and it's not perfect. So I hope it works. I hope it works out well. And I just spoke at length. Ralph, I'm sorry, but there's music playing in the background, and this hour flew on by.
Fun stuff.
Absolutely. So if people want to find out more, and especially your past appearances here on Computer America, because your articles are timeless, where can they go?
Oh, just come on out to your website, of course, computeramerica.com. And if you want to come out to my website, just point your browser to Ralph Bond and then the word Wix, W-I-X. That'll immediately give you the link to my Wix-based personal website. And then I have a whole tab where you can see all the stuff about my work with Ben and the show and so forth. And it's always just a joy. And by the way, don't miss, friends, the story about mind control of drones that's in the show notes for this week. Pick up those show notes and check that story out.
Absolutely. And all those, again, available at computeramerica.com. Ralph, we're out of time. Everyone, have a great weekend. Thank you so much. Do something fun. Catch us here next week. Bye-bye, everyone.